Hello everyone. Welcome to Trojan Sign. Today in this video, I will talk about the protesters spread to Kabul as Taliban struggle to govern. Protesters took to the streets to rally against Taliban rule for the second day on Thursday, this time marching in Kabul, including near the presidential palace. At one demonstration in the city, about 200 people had gathered before the Taliban broke it up violently. The Taliban announced a curfew in the southeastern city of Khost, also on Thursday, after protests there. The authorities did not say how long it would be in effect. And several people were killed in the eastern city of Asadabad when Taliban fighters fired on people waving the national flag at a rally there on Thursday, Afghanistan's annual Independence Day. According to a witness cited by Reuters, it was not clear whether the casualties had come from the gunshots or from a stampede they set off. The witness, Muhammad Salim, was quoted by the news agency as saying, "It was a remarkable display of defiance, coming just one day after violence broke out at protests in two other cities, with Taliban members shooting into crowds and beating demonstrators." It was also further evidence that while tens of thousands are now seeking escape, there were many more left behind and determined to have a voice in the kind of country in which they live. Taliban members are intensifying a search for people who they believe worked with US and NATO forces, including among the crowds of Afghans outside Kabul's airport, and have threatened to kill or arrest their family members if they cannot find them, according to a confidential United Nations document. Afghans, fleeing the country, face violence from the Taliban on the dangerous road to the airport, where the U.S. military has tried to quell the continued chaos. The sound of fighter jets roaring over Kabul was nearly constant on Thursday as more U.S. and international forces raced to evacuate outside the airport. As they struggle with the immediate crisis, the Taliban is facing threats to the long-term stability of the state. The new regime is finding itself frozen out financially. The International Monetary Fund said on Wednesday that it would block Afghanistan's access to about $460 million in emergency reserves, a decision that followed pressure from the Biden administration. An agreement reached in November among more than 60 countries to send Afghanistan $12 billion over the next 4 years is also in doubt. The assistance is critical in a country where the UN estimates that many are going hungry. That's 14 million people, including 2 million children who are malnourished, the World Food Programme said in a statement. Some protests turned violent when demonstrators tried to tear down the new Taliban flag and replace it with the tricolors of the Afghan one. Salute those who carry the national flag and thus stand for dignity of the nation and the country, a top official for the deposed Afghan government, Amrullah Saleh, wrote on Twitter. In the 20th century, there have been at least 19 iterations of the flag. Afghanistan, a nation with a brutal history, but also home to beautiful natural wonders and a quilt of cultures, is now the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The Taliban reasserted its new regime in a tweet on Thursday commemorating the anniversary of independence from British rule more than a century ago. That anniversary was also the occasion for the street protests, with many calling for independence from Taliban rule. The international airport in Kabul has been a scene of chaos since the Taliban took control of Afghanistan. Footage shows crowds gathered outside the airport on Thursday as an infant was passed over razor wire to an American soldier. Credit. Image by Omar Haidari, Reuters. The press of the crowd is the first thing you see. At the top of the frame, a man swings something wildly, and a mass of humanity pushes and pulls. In the distance, the airport. The only escape. The only place in Kabul not under Taliban control, behind blast walls and desperately out of reach. Then, chaos breaks loose. New video outside Kabul's international airport obtained by the New York Times on Wednesday offers a vivid illustration of the peril facing Afghans, even those who worked with the Americans and have been told that they can leave the country, as they try to find a way through an increasingly dangerous and forbidding path to escape. As people scream, a man holding a small child in his arms flashes across the screen. Gunshots ring out. The camera whirls, briefly catching a glimpse of the sun scorching the sands as people scatter for safety. More gunshots. A woman crouches in fear. There are people in military uniform, but it is unclear who they are and what control they have. At one point, one seems to aim his weapon not into the sky but at the crowd. A child wails. All around are clothes, shoes and other possessions, personal items left behind in the mayhem. The harrowing scenes in the minute-long video are also a glimpse at the broader problem facing the United States and other nations as they work to evacuate not only their own citizens, but also the Afghans who have assisted them during 2 decades of war. President Biden had set a deadline of August 31st to get an estimated 10,000 U.S. citizens in Afghanistan to safety. Pressed during an interview with ABC News on Wednesday, he suggested that the deadline might be extended. Americans should understand that we're going to try to get it done before August 31st. But, he then said, if we don't, we'll determine at the time who's left. The situation on the ground suggests that it will be exceedingly difficult to meet that target. Not to mention evacuating the tens of thousands of Afghans who have worked with the Americans. The road to the airport has been particularly dangerous in recent days, with Taliban members patrolling checkpoints. Just after 7 a.m. on Thursday, a Taliban fighter stood on a concrete barricade, holding a radio and a handgun in one hand and shouting. Taxis inched forward along a road lined with abandoned cars. An Afghan-British family waited in the crowd, a mother and daughter wearing black chadors and head scarves, and 2 sons standing next to suitcases. Some families waited in taxis. Others got out to walk. Parents carried small children, and a man pounded on the back of a van to keep it from backing into his mother, whom he pushed in a wheelchair. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.